Shawn Fain, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, great to be here. Yeah.
So, I want to talk about the organizing efforts. And I guess the first sort of broad question is folks have described this to me as almost like a perfect storm for you guys. You have the tailwinds from the Detroit 3 contracts and the strike, you have general sentiment for unions rising, you're putting space between you guys and the corruption scandal, you have a very friendly White House and NLRB. How do you view this? Is this the union's best opportunity to get some organizing wins?
I think it's the best opportunity in our lifetime. I believe there's always great opportunity, but with the conditions, I view this a lot. I talk to people. I look at my grandparents' generation. Coming out of the Great Depression in the 30s and 40s, and when labor exploded at that time, and I think it's a similar situation. We went through a recession a decade ago, and since that recession, corporate profits went through the roof at the expense of working class people. Working class people have been left behind, and so then you throw in a COVID pandemic on top of that. I think that made people reflect a lot about what's important in life, and what's important in life isn't working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. It's not working 2 and 3 jobs just to live paycheck to paycheck and scrape to get by. So I think it's a culmination of a lot of things, but I do think the times we're in right now, obviously workers are looking for a better way, and it's a fundamental thing. Without a union, you're an employee at will, and you have no rights whatsoever. The employer can change the terms and conditions of your employment every day, and you have no control of that. With a union, you have control of that. You have a contract, and so that's, to me, the biggest selling point of why you need a union, why workers need a union. But I do believe, conditions are as favorable as they've been in my lifetime.
I'm wondering on the timing. I've heard a story that, at the end of the strike, once you guys were signing the contracts, that you guys noticed some activity picking up on some dormant websites for the transplant automakers, and that's how you knew that there was maybe interest. Can you recount that?
We had workers calling also, but it was we had a social media, on some of our pages, we had a form on our website that was to sign up to join the UAW, and it was from 2017. This form was, but they started showing up. And so naturally, between workers calling with interest, we saw there was obviously a lot more interest than had been happening. And naturally, with the Big Three campaign, they see the UAW doing things differently now. We've really changed. We've really turned the union around, and we're doing things. We're a lot more aggressive. We're how the union should have been for years and hasn't been. And so it's a member-led, member-driven union. And it hasn't been that in my lifetime. And so I just think, again, a lot of those things, people are seeing a difference. Naturally, our Big Three contract campaign and strike, stand-up strike, I think made people reflect on where they are. And our, that strike was a great example. 75% of America stood with us in that strike. And there's a reason why, because union or not, working class people are all living the same reality. And so they obviously are starting to see that this is their path forward.
This is a loaded question, and understanding that each organizing drive, each election is unique.
Yeah.
But for so long, the UAW has tried and failed to organize the South. Why do you think that is? Why has it struggled so much?
I think it's a difference in philosophy. I think it's a difference in leadership styles. Our union's been a top-down structure forever, and in past drives, I think a lot of it was led by leadership versus letting the workers lead it. And so one thing we're doing differently, the workers are leading this fight. They've reached out to us, and and for instance, at the Mercedes location in Vance, Alabama. Those workers, literally, we're staying out of the way. They took the bull by the horns. They're running with it, and they're growing it. We have staff there to support them, but they're leading. And Volkswagen, very similar. The workers, they've tried before. They've been very close, and naturally, they're seeing the difference now in what's going on with the union and in this country. And so they've led this, and we're just supporting them in that fight. And we have majorities of both those places, super majorities, and I do believe we'll have a successful conclusion here real soon.
I've heard at the international level in the organizing department, I've heard before people have half joked that in the past it was almost a punishment that if you got on somebody's bad side, they'd send you to organizing.
Yeah.
What specifically, how have you revamped that department? What sort of personnel changes have you made? What is the strategy there?
Well, this union, unfortunately, it's notoriously in the past, I've seen it. If you piss off your boss, we'll send you in organizing and send you somewhere else and, try to make your life hell. And that's a horrible way to organize. If you load it with people that are, not happy and you're doing it as punishment, I don't think your plan is going to be very effective. Look, when I came in as president, I said one thing. I ran on a platform that I wanted to do things differently, wanted to turn this union around. I want it to be a member-driven, member-led union, and I took people that we currently have on staff, but I also brought in people that aren't UAW members but have a history of working in unions and leading in unions and winning in unions, in organizing, in contract fights, and all those things. And I thought it was imperative to bring people in that haven't been ingrained in the UAW way of doing things the last 40 years, in company unionism, basically. And so that we could have, a fresh set of eyes and a fresh set of ideas. And those of us that have been here that don't like the way things were, you combine those things, and that's what's led us to where we are. So with organizing, I brought in a new lead to head up organizing, and he's done a hell of a job, and we've made some changes in staff, and we're putting people in organizing that are organizers, that want to organize, that's their passion, and that makes a hell of a difference also.
And that's Brian Shepard.
Yeah.
He came from the service sector. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah.
What sort of advantages has he brought to the table?
Just overall strategies. Actually, look, we're. I'll say this. I've said this before, but we've had a history in this union of complacency. From the leadership on down, and it's been, in my opinion, the company union. The companies and the leadership are way too close, and so that led to complacency among some of the staff, and just coasting. And rather than, this is a fight, this is a grind. When you're in labor and you're organizing, you're trying to grow a union. There's no room for complacency. Every day, every battle, whether it's contract fights, whether it's trying to organize new workers, whatever it is, changing legislation, fighting, for humanity. You've got to shake things up, and you've got to have leaders and staff that are willing to go the extra mile to do that. So we've made some changes, and I do believe, Brian's been an excellent addition, and we've moved staff around, and we're seeing the results of that already. I mean, think about this. We finished the contract, the Big Three contract, in 100 days. In 100 days, we filed for an election at Volkswagen. It took years before, it took months before to get to that point. And so that, I think, is just it's proof in the results of all those changes in where we are as a nation, where workers are, and how we're doing things differently in the UAW. All those things, are coming together, and that's the result of it.
Could you go through that 30, 50, 70 strategy? What was the impetus behind that? And did you think specifically with VW that maybe once you got to that supermajority that there would be a recognition? Did you expect that there would be a vote? And do you think there'll have to be a vote everywhere else too?
I think there'll be a vote because the companies aren't changing. I mean, let's be real. The companies, they break the law every day. They have captive audience meetings. They threaten employees. They, tell them they're going to close plants. They fire employees. We've seen that at Mercedes in the last week. We had to file more ULPs. And it's a reality. That's what's wrong with this country. That's what's wrong with this world. Working class people and the poor and citizens are generally held accountable for anything we do, but when it comes to the corporate class and the billionaire class, the laws don't apply to them, and that needs to change. So, we got the supermajority at Volkswagen, but Volkswagen's still been, breaking the law, violating, threatening workers, and Mercedes, as I said, have recently just fired a few workers, and all those things are done for one reason. They want workers to be afraid. It's done out of fear. They want to make workers afraid of having some control over their lives, because the way it is now, without a union, the company has all the control, and that's what this is all about. So that's what we're out to change, and these workers are realizing that now, and I believe that's why it'll be different. These companies have promised them things in the past, but they see things go backwards, and I think they're wise to that now, and they realize their only path forward is by organizing and getting control of their work lives.
Talking specifically about VW, kind of expressed it already, but how confident are you in that vote? And what is the biggest hurdle? What will be the biggest challenge to getting that victory?
I'm confident we'll win. I'm confident the workers are fed up. I'm confident workers in this country are fed up. I think we're going to win a lot, but I do believe we're going to win the Volkswagen election. And, the biggest hurdle to me is just, as I just said, I mean, the companies are going to, and outside groups and, politicians, they pull out all the stops because they don't want working class people to have any control of their lives. They don't want working class people to have any power. They want to keep things as it is. They want to keep the order as it is, where the people at the top have all the power and all the control, and everyone else is left fending for themselves. And so that's to me, the biggest obstacle, but I think we're going to see that change. And I think once we see the first domino fall, you're going to see a lot more follow.
A question with VW on works councils. Obviously, that was a big part of things in 2014, the thought that you unionize and you can set up a works council. Do you anticipate if you're victorious there that you would set up a local works council, and what would that power dynamic be?
We'll have to see. I'm not a, look, the works councils in Germany and places work for them because they have law. They have laws that, stipulate these things. They have laws that are favorable for working class people, unlike America, where all the laws, we have our political system's been sold out and hoarded out, thanks to legislation like Citizens United, rulings like Citizens United, where, corporations and the wealthy can give unlimited amounts of cash to politicians, and they call it free speech, but let's call it what it is. It's extortion. And they get laws put in place that don't favor working class people. I mean, they don't have that situation in Germany where they have works councils. So, I don't know that system will work here. At the end of the day, like here in America, I call that company unionism. I don't have any interest in sitting on corporate boards, because me as a president of a union has one board seat, and there's 15 or 20 board members that are all corporate people. Am I really going to affect change on that board? They don't give a damn about working class people and our issues. They care about one thing: profit and corporate greed. And so, I don't, I think the workers have to make a lot of decisions in how we go forward, but I believe I think they'll follow the same path that we're on, with Big Three and other auto. And I think they'll have a lot of success with that.
If you win the vote, how quickly will you push for a contract?
I mean, we go to work immediately. I mean, we always will. I mean, that's the next part of this. I mean, a lot of people, in this country, we focus so much on the election, but the election is just the first step. I mean, we've seen it over and over in this country where workers vote to organize and form a union, and then the companies spend years. The workers spend years trying to get a first contract. And the companies just delay and draw it out and frustrate workers and hope that they, kill the will for them to want to stay the course and get that. So we're going to push immediately to get to a first contract, and we're going to fight like hell and do whatever we have to do to make it happen.
Is there anything you can do to push back if they try to delay and string things out?
I don't want to we have things mapped out. We have strategies in place and we have plans in place, but I don't really want to get into all that, because we just have to see how things proceed. And how the companies act will dictate how we act. And I said the same thing in Big Three bargaining. I mean, we didn't want to strike, but that was up to the companies whether we had to or not. And unfortunately, they didn't want to heed our warnings and heed our advice. And when they put us to the test, we did what we had to do, and we'll do the same thing when it comes to first contracts.
I'm wondering, in the organizing drive, a lot of these southern transplant automakers have supplier parks right at or right near the plants. Do you anticipate any knock-on effects from organizing the assembly plants with the suppliers around them?
Well, I think it'll have an impact. And I mean, look, this is all up to the workers. I mean, workers have to decide if they want a better life for themselves or if they're happy with the status quo. I mean, if workers are happy living paycheck to paycheck and scraping to get by and the boss having all the control, then, we can't make them. And we're not going to make people join the union. We want people to join because they want to be a part of this and they want a better life for themselves. And, and that's the ironic part of some of what we read about in the arguments from the other side, from the corporate side. They talk about the unions threatening or intimidating people to join. We don't threaten anybody. As we just said, I mean, workers reached out to us. They want to join. The people that threaten people are the companies. They have captive audience meetings and they threaten workers and tell them they're going to lose their job or they fire them or they, threaten to close a plant, whatever it is. I mean, I always find the twisted irony in that when they say one thing in the media, but when you look at reality, Mercedes fired a couple workers recently. They're the bullies. And so I believe it's up to the workers. And I believe workers are realizing that more and more now that this is their path to a better life.
I'm wondering if you could make that case for us. Some of these places, I think Toyota, Georgetown in particular, I don't think they've laid anybody off even during the recession. If you're a worker there and you've seen that and you've seen, they did get a substantial raise after the UAW bump, as you call it. Mm-hmm. Why would you make the case for them to join the union? What would their dues, if they join, be getting them?
It's they're first off, get them a contract where Toyota can't give you a 11% pay raise one week and take it away the next. It gives you control, gives you a contract, which you have say in your work life. But the irony of that is when Toyotas of the world brag about they didn't lay anyone off in the recession, what they don't talk about is 40% of their workforce is temp workers. They don't count those temp workers when they cut them as layoffs. And of course, that's never reported. So, we need to be real when we talk about these situations in the transplants in the South. Is most of them carry 40% plus temp workforces. So when Toyota bragged about not laying a worker off in the recession, they cut temps. They just didn't lay off their full-time people. And it's ironic to me, again, the UAW was villainized for having what they called a jobs bank, where you don't lay people off, you let them do community works initiatives. But Toyota was hailed during the recession while we were being, raked over the coals for having this jobs bank. Toyota was hailed as heroes because they didn't lay their workers off, their full-time people, and they kept them working doing community projects. They were looked at as the greatest company in the world for that. So, we have to be real and talk about facts and these things and look at it in the same lens, because there's one lens for us and there's another lens for somebody else in that situation.
Sure.
And it's the same thing.
I'm wondering, Stephen Sylvia wrote a book on organizing, UAW Southern Gamble. Mm-hmm. Talked with him recently, and he said from his perspective, it looked like over the course of various campaigns, the UAW did try to innovate. They did try different tactics, but it still ultimately resulted in failure way more often than not, with a few exceptions. What gives you this confidence that now is different?
I just think it's a different, like I said, I go back to this, it's a difference in leadership, difference in philosophies, difference in strategies. People see the UAW now as what it should be, a fighting, thriving union that's member-driven and that's going to look out for the best interest of the members, not look out for the best interest of the leadership at the top. And that's what it's been. I've said this for decades in this union. When you bargain substandard agreements and you see workers go backwards, when you bargain tiers and things like that, when you give things back in the best of times, when bad times hit, the companies take all they can take. And, in the best of times, we should be fighting for our workers, getting the best we can get. When you set the example, when you set the standard, people want to be a part of that. My grandparents, all four of my grandparents left the South, after the Depression. They were destitute. They were poor. They wanted a better life. When they got jobs at GM and Chrysler, it changed their lives because there were standard setting, the top wages, benefits, and all that. They lived the American dream. And that dream's been dead for the past 40 years in this country. And I believe it's a direct correlation with we've seen unions decline over those same 40 years, and we've seen this massive wealth inequality, the gap between rich and poor, continue to grow. And when you have 3 families in America that have as much wealth as the bottom 50%, we got a big problem here. And so I do believe all those conditions factor into why people are fed up with being left behind in the best of times. Our work generates those massive profits for these companies, and workers need to be treated better for that.
You've touched on this in some of your speeches, but what would be the advantage? What would be good for you if you're able to secure some organizing victories in your bargaining, in your relationships with the Detroit automakers? What would that do for you?
Well, I think it makes it more of an even playing field. I mean, number one, there's always the threat. There's always, I always, again, found this a fallacy in our past leadership. I mean, they would come to us with the excuse that, well, we've got to do this because the transplants only pay this much, the transplants only do that. Well, my philosophy has always been, screw that. We set the standard, they're going to come up to our level, because if they don't, workers are going to want to be a part of that. And you're seeing that now. We bargained a record contract, the best contract in our history, and other workers saw that and they want to be a part of that. And so what did Toyota and what did all these companies do? Right away, Toyota, within 2 weeks of our ratification, gave workers a pay raise. And then Honda followed, then Nissan, then, Volkswagen, Mercedes. They did that for one reason. That's why I said we're going to claim this. They're doing it because of what we bargained for, because they're scared to death that those workers are going to realize that they can have a better life if they join a union. So that's why I said we call it the UAW bump. You are welcome. And when they join the UAW, they're going to recognize even better gains and better benefits.
I think in some of the past organizing drives, especially with VW, it was said that international cooperation between some of the unions overseas was a benefit, and the union recognized that. I'm curious, either with VW or even with any of the other automakers, have there been conversations behind the scenes, in front of the scenes?
Yes.
How is that international cooperation?
Yeah, we've been talking with IG Metall, with specifically to Volkswagen and Mercedes, about the violations that the companies are. I mean, they're breaking their own code. They're breaking they're violating their laws of who they are as a corporation in Germany, and IG Metall is pushing that in Germany. We communicate between the unions. So we communicate with workers and with unions in Mexico. Had a delegation from there here this last week and met with them. And we have to lift the standard everywhere. And we have to stand up, for our union family in Mexico, Brazil, anywhere that there are workers. We need to stand together. And we're fighting global corporations. They've done it years ago, and they've pooled their resources and they fight us globally. We have to stand together as working class globally. This isn't just an American problem; it's a global problem. Workers everywhere are fed up, and we saw that again in our Big Three fight. We had workers from all over the world, unions from all over the world, that came and stood on the picket lines with our workers that wanted to be a part of it. And they're taking a lot of what we've done, they're applying it, and we're talking, and we're planning for May of 28. Hopefully we'll see bigger plans and even a bigger plan fold out with working class people globally.
VW's been an interesting case with the past elections because it seems management's stance has swung. 2014, I think they let organizers in the plant, gave them space. 2019 seemed to be more hostile towards the election. You've touched on this already, but what do you see from VW right now, and do you expect it? I think Governor Lee talked to workers the last time. Have you heard from him? Have you heard from his office? What will be the political angle?
I haven't heard from him or his office, but I mean, anyone in politics, I don't care what their party politics are. I mean, when you go in there and you tell workers, not to do this, it's going to be bad for you. I mean, that person's not paying your bills. That person's not, Governor Lee's not scraping to get by living paycheck to paycheck. And, neither is, Governor Ivey in Alabama or anywhere else. And, Again, they're serving their corporate interest. They're serving the people that are paying paying for their elections, paying for their campaigns, and they don't give a damn about working class people. If they did, they'd be on our side. They'd be on the side of those workers. So anyone that walks in there and tells workers this isn't good for you is not looking out for the interests of those workers. And they're going to do what they're going to do. That's up to them. They gotta live with that. They gotta look themselves in the mirror at night and know that they're crapping on working class people. And eventually, people will wise up to that. And I think people are wising up to that. And there'll be repercussions for that in the future when they run for office, I believe.
I did want to ask, your chief of staff, Chris, wrote for Labor Notes back in 2019 after the VW election a pretty detailed postmortem about why he felt the UAW lost. Mm-hmm. Has he helped give input in terms of the organizing strategy, and how much of what he has said have you relied on or tried to take into account?
No, I mean, I've brought in, like I said, Brian Shepard. Chris Brooks is one of my top administrative assistants. It's been a whole group of us. I mean, there are people, Chuck Browning, that was here. He worked on the Volkswagen campaign as a top assistant to the president, years ago. And, it's a team of us, our communications team. It's really all of us coming together, looking at what didn't work, where we've been as a union, where we believe we should be, and the current situation. I mean, there's a lot of new employees that are there that weren't there in those drives. So, there's some that were there. There's a lot that weren't. So there's a lot of different factors into this. But yeah, Chris has been an integral part in our strategies and everything we've done with Big Three bargaining, with organizing, and all that. And I tell people this. I mean, because it's kind of ironic. People will say, "Oh, Chris wrote something, and it wasn't. It was negative toward the UAW." But I've wrote things negative about the UAW as a member, as a shop chairman. I was anti-ratification in 2007 when they implemented tiers. I mean, so that's what a union is. If this has been the problem with this union for decades, is what the expectation has been when the president speaks or a vice president speaks, we're just supposed to jump in line and bob our heads and follow. That's not a union, and that's not a democracy. That's an authoritarian form of government, and we do not believe in that. And so any time I talk to people, and my staff, I encourage, look, I don't expect to say something everyone just nod their heads. If you're all agreeing with me, then we got a problem in this room. And the same thing with the membership. There are members that are, even with our greatest contract in our history, there are members that are critical of what we've done. I mean, that's a democracy, and that's what a union should be. I'm not mad at those members. I'm listening. And, if maybe we missed something, maybe I was wrong on something. I don't know. If I was, we're going to fix it. But we're going to listen to members. We're going to listen to all those points of view, and we're going to move forward. So Chris Brooks has brought invaluable insight into everything we've been doing, and I'd stand behind that any day of the week.
I think we're close on time, but I did want to ask kind of a big picture question. How much do you view this organizing drive as part of your legacy as president? Or is there any concern that if you fail, the next election coming up in a couple of years, right, if that would impact things?
Look, man, we got a job to do, and I'm focused on the job, and I could care less about legacy. I'm not doing this because I want a legacy. I'm not doing this because I want to be somebody. I'm doing this for one reason. I'm a fed up worker. I've been in this fight for 30 years, actually longer. I was an IBW member before I was a UAW member, and I've lived. I've been on unemployment. I've been on government aid to get formula and diapers for my firstborn child. I don't forget those things. And I don't want working class people to have to struggle like I did. I've scraped to get by paycheck to paycheck. I know what it's like. And I don't want people to have that life. I want better for people. And so I'm going to do the best I can do, fight like hell. Elections and those things take care of themselves. Look, we have a democratically elected union now in our top leadership. It's direct elections. If the membership wants me to have a second term, that's up to them. I mean, I'm going to run again. I have every intention of doing that, but that's up to the membership. And legacies and things like that, I'll worry about that, when I'm done. And that's the focus, though, is winning for working class people and changing their lives, not just in America but in the world.
One quick last one, if I could. Anything in particular surprised you during this organizing drive, this campaign? Anything you've learned, been surprised by?
Not really surprised. I mean, I think we knew where working class people are just from our fight and the big three, and just seeing the support we've got everywhere. Um, it's I think to me the most gratifying thing I've just seen throughout the whole process in my first year is just, I was sworn in on March 26th on a Sunday, and on Monday I was running a bargaining convention for the UAW, and it was a very divided house. People were just accepting the reality that who won and who didn't win, and I think our contract campaign and through that fight, it really brought the membership together and brought the leadership together. And so I say this confidently that our union is more unified than it's been in my 30 years, and I'm really proud of that, and I'm proud to see the public, not just in America but globally, is standing with us now, and so I think I wouldn't have seen this happening this quick. I thought it would take a long, long time to really get some of the things that have happened and the momentum we've got to happen. But I'd say that maybe if you call it a surprise, I guess that's the pleasant surprise in all of it.
Shawn, thanks so much for the time.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Good to talk to you.
Thank you.